we collected the material, we filmed it. Then my crew, Bob Alice, Davey Weingold, Ronnie Paul, I remember these guys. We rushed from Staten Island with our film. In those days, it was all film, no videotape yet. And I told my news director, Al Primo, that this story was the biggest story that anyone had ever done, certainly the biggest story in my life. And he was already receiving calls from state officials threatening my arrest and threatening massive lawsuits for the violation of the privacy of the people inside building number 6, the B ward. I said, you can't back down now. We've got to put this on the air now. We have to tell this story. This isn't Dachau. This isn't some East Bloc political prison. This is the world's largest institution for people with this disability, over 6,000 residents, and it is in New York City. It is in the center of the universe. It is within sight of the Empire State Building, and it is awful. It is something that is beyond description. It is something that our audience must see for themselves, because nobody knows, and the people who know aren't saying. They aren't saying because of their own conflicts about how they're caring for their own or not caring for their own inner turmoil, their own confusion, their own ignorance about how people with these disabilities should be cared for. We put that story on the air. It was January 6, 1972. The world exploded. Everybody felt the same sense of rage and frustration that I did, everybody. Parents who, until that time, many of them, God bless them, confronted with conflicting information, stressed and struggling, as many parents are today, felt a sense both of cathartic relief and embarrassment. Oh my God, what have I done for my own flesh and blood? Employees who worked for the state and were essentially the guards or the facilitators of that horror that we saw, they also responded in the same way. Oh my God, what have I been participating in? Is this job I've been doing, is this in any way something that is righteous and good? What about my life? What about my work? State officials, after their initial rage at me, put on the defensive, as they often are in the face of an investigative expose. They also started, my goodness, what is this and what is that? But I'm telling you, that moment and that line, I said that night when I showed that film, this is what it looked like, and this is what it sounded like. And the sound was a kind of mournful wail. But how can I tell you about the way it smelled? It was an utter failure to care for a population that needed smart, compassionate assistance. The expose part, though, ironically, turned out to be the easiest part of this journey, because the state's budget was what it was. There was no consensus in those days. It's difficult to believe now. You have Phil's wonderful YAI. You have the other. You have ARC and WRC. You have wonderful not-for-profit organizations who have helped define this course. But in those days, the whole concept of community care was foreign. It was alien. It was, as far as I can recall, never even mentioned. And then slowly, as we dug deeper into this process, and as the innovators in the field began to come forward, it became clear that what was needed was the Constitution of the United States. What was needed was the realization and the recognition that a person with developmental disabilities is no less a citizen, is no less an American, is no more or less right to obtain what life has to offer, to be all they can be. So simple. It seems now so foreign it was then. But then, in the months and the churning and the filing of the federal lawsuits and everything that was happening, it became clear that small community-based residence, where the person could live to the fullest extent of his or her potential, where the circumstances could be as quote-unquote normal as possible, that was the blueprint to the successful lives of people whose lives had been basically forfeit under the old way. And then came the long, hard grind. It took 15 years to close the Willowbrook State School. It was not until 1987 that you, Kerry, and then Mario Cuomo announced that historic date, and they gave me, and I have it to this day, I was going to bring it, but my senior moments I forgot, the key. I have the key to Building 6, the B Ward. The struggle that happened, aside from the 15 years it took to close the institution and institutions like it, and this spread like wildfire to states throughout the nation, it also, and I think we're blessed to have the representative from Jordan here, became a worldwide acceptance of the rejection of the institutional model for caring, the mass producing the care of humans the way you mass produce bad cars or care for animals. It became a worldwide phenomenon where we rejected the bedlam mode and embraced a new humanitarian approach. And still there were struggles. Struggles against public services unions. More bitter, struggles against neighborhoods who did not understand what good neighbors people with developmental disabilities can make. Struggles with people who saw in the community home a threat to their real estate values, or this or that, or a threat to their physical safety, the law and order. We help dispel the ignorance. We help convey the message that there is much more in common than there are things that separate us. That long and rocky road, that long struggle continues to this day. The institution of today is the waiting list in so many states for services like those provided by YAI. And with all due respect to the Commissioner, and with New York as a shining example of a state that does it right, there are so many places that still struggle, and in these hard economic times, the pressure, ladies and gentlemen, regardless of the good fortune of having this particular administration in the Empire State, the hard times are coming. For every public dollar, there will be a struggle. And the fight will be, and the new front will be, to prevent going back down the hill backwards. That's what the fight will be, to prevent an erosion of the gains that have been mandated by the federal court and by our advocates.